Maravillosos. Hola Cami, buenos días. Hola Claudia, hoy día sí
Buenos
te vas a poder
días.
unir a la traducción, Claudia. Que ayer la Claudia quedó colgada, decía, con la traducción. No te escuchamos.
Igual apliqué donde está lo que decían ustedes el español y no me resultó.
Ah, ahora todavía no, porque tiene que entrar la traductora para
Sí,
que la pongamos de traducción y ahí va a empezar. Y
ya,
cualquier cosa, escríbenos al... Ella está, tú estás en el chat del seminario, ¿cierto? El WhatsApp.
sí, sí.
Ya, cualquier cosa escribes por ahí porque está Camila está pendiente, estamos todos pendientes de que todo
Ya,
resulte.
muchas gracias.
Voy a poner musiquita y el
Ya.
Pablo, ¿ya?
Ok. Leticia.
Buenos días a todos. Buenos días, Jardín.
Buenos días.
Ah, muy bien el español.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Bienvenidos.
Yes.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Bueno, esperamos seguir disfrutando hoy día con los aprendizajes que nos entrega Jardín, así que te dejamos para que nos puedas compartir tu sabiduría. Les recuerdo que las preguntas las esperamos en el chat que tenemos. También les recuerdo que cualquiera que vaya a hablar haga una pausa, no hable tan rápido y que en interpretación abajo en el mundo tienen que poner español. ¿Ok?
Okay. Thank you, Marcella. Good morning, everyone, and welcome today to those who were with us yesterday and to some new colleagues and friends who are joining us today. A special welcome to you, Leticia. I mentioned yesterday that Leticia from Asuncion, Paraguay, and the organization Enfoque would be joining us today. So very pleased to see you.
Thank you, Harleen. I'm honored to be here. Thank you
Well,
to Dialógicas, to Marcela, to Nicole also.
And I would like to welcome back Carla, who is helping us talk with each other. Without her, we could not be doing what we're doing. Carla is the translator. So yesterday, if you'll remember, that I asked you if you have room on your screen, if you're from a country that is not Chile, to add your country beside your name. So see that we have Emma back from Argentina. We have Sandra. Do you say Sandra or Sandra? Also from Argentina.
Sandra.
Sandra, okay. And then we have Camilla. Welcome, Camilla, is with the Institute and helps Marcel with a lot of things. And I guess I should slow down talking so that Carla can translate. Okay, so yesterday I talked a lot, it seems like. I gave you the opportunity to talk with each other and to pose questions, to ask questions. Preguntas, right? Preguntas. Los or los? Preguntas.
Las
¿Cómo se dice questions en español?
preguntas.
Las preguntas with an A, okay. Okay, Carla, I am on English, so I can hear your English. I can hear you now, yes. Okay, and then the last part of the day, or the last hour and a half, we focused on an organization from Santiago, and it's a public health organization with a physical medical health component and a mental health part. And we had members of the team that I had a conversation with. So I told you at the end of the day yesterday that I would share some of my memories or some of my thoughts about our conversation. And that sometime today we will continue that conversation as the participants prefer to continue. And I do not yet know if it will be the same participants or whether they will have new team members joining them, or that some may not be here because of family obligations. So, collaborative dialogic practice is something that I've been told is very difficult, as we say, to kind of wrap your arms around, to understand what it is and what to do and how you do what to do. And as I mentioned yesterday, for me, the core or primary aspects of it have to do with relationships and conversations. The way we begin to meet and greet and join with others and develop relationships that invite them to talk with us. And remember yesterday, I emphasized the word with. And I also said that the way that we begin to engage with each other influences and sets the tone or sets the stage for how we will be able to talk with each other. And similarly, or likewise, the way we begin to talk with each other influences the way that we can engage with each other. Now, I am using my arms and my hands a lot. I do not right now see myself on the screen, so I don't know what you're seeing. Oh, just my head. Okay, I see myself now. And the bright morning sun is coming in my window. So yesterday, Marcella had invited a team from our public community mental health organization to talk with me. And I invited them. Now, let's see, Carla, will you put up slide number 3, please? Okay. I didn't give you notice that I would ask for that. I apologize. Okay, she's putting up a slide of a quote that some of you may have seen in some of my writings. And I think yeah, if you would read it in Espanol. You can read it in Espanol.
Comencemos con esto.
Okay. This quote I like a lot because it puts into someone else's words how I think about how I want to begin to meet people and interact with them. It also connects with, let's see, I think it was the first question or interest yesterday morning, and it could have been from, it was from Jean, and asking about some of the philosophical influences of collaborative dialogic practices. And when I was talking, I mentioned the philosophy of hermeneutics, the philosophy of understanding, of pre-understanding. And so this quote invites us, I invite myself and I invite you to, as best we can, even though we bring all of our prejudice, our biases, our pre-understandings with us, when we meet other people, it's like how to leave those kind of floating over to the side, so that what we bring are not the ears or the eyes through which we hear and see the other person or persons. That we can meet them as they prefer to be and not meet them as the people that we think they are or want them to be. So yesterday, I do realize with the team, like with a client or with one of their community patients, that although what we do is very familiar to us, and we usually know somewhat the people we're working with, that when the people we meet come to see us, like the members of the community come to see the team, that we're foreigners to them. That they may have heard about us, have some ideas about us, that they've learned from previous experiences with other colleagues, or that they've read in a book or seen in a movie, that they have ideas about who we
Han
are.
leído en un libro o han escuchado en una película.
Excuse me. They have ideas about who we are and how we're going to be.
Tienen ideas de qué es lo que somos y qué es lo que vamos a hacer.
And they have ideas about how they
Tienen
feel.
ideas de.
So when I first met the team,
Así que cuando conocí al equipo por primera vez,
what was important for me
lo más importante para mí
is, although one of them at least had experienced me before on another trip to
es
Chile,
que, aunque algunos de ellos estuvieron conmigo en otro viaje que yo tuve a Chile,
they may only have experienced me previously by hearing about me, or with me as I was engaging with everyone yesterday. So I wanted to greet them and welcome them, to help them see that I am just another person who's interested in them and learning about them. And so you'll remember that some of the first things that I asked about were about their organization. tell me about what should I know about, what should we all know about their work in their public health organization. And so let's see, Alex began talking, and he's I don't remember the order in which he said this, but the word I wrote down was tired. We're tired. That our families are becoming more demanding. And that we want to be more a part of the community. And have the families be more of a part of the community. And then I asked, did the team have an opportunity to talk with each other about how they wanted to use the time in talking with me? What did they hope would come from the conversation? What did they want to accomplish? Now, I'm just saying these things from my memory. I do not remember the exact questions I asked or the exact words I used. But Alex deferred to, I think, Valeria and Valentina. And one of them said they wanted to talk about the problems related to the pandemic that they were able to overcome. This is what I wrote down in English after I heard the English translation. Now, this is very important that you develop a good memory. They wanted to talk about problems related to the pandemic that they had been able to overcome, as well as how to continue overcoming the problems. Does the word overcome translate? The problems that they had been able to find ways to deal with, yet they still wanted to learn more ways to deal with the problems. And so we began to learn a lot about their work, their team, as each person talked. And then Pablo offered us a very specific situation of some of his work with a woman and how he was very creatively able to help her in what we might think of, or what the team might have thought of, or their colleagues might have thought of, in a very unusual way. Where he helped her by writing a letter regarding a legal problem with the police. Very, 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 very interesting story and challenge. And I think very connected to their question and what they wanted to talk about. How they could creatively respond to some of the challenges the pandemic presented, as well as find new ways to respond or work with their patients and the families and the community. And then something else that really caught my attention during their telling their story. And I think of their story as what I call a collective story. We had multiple parts of the story told by different members. And we're left to kind of put those pieces together to develop our view of what the story is that we've created from what they're sharing with us. And also important to keep in mind that there are many parts of the story that they will choose not to tell us, not on purpose, but because they've started talking and telling an aspect of the story that they were interested in telling at the time. I'm looking at my notes. One of the things that they did say is that they had been able as a team to have excellent coordination among themselves and with the people, the families, and with members of the community with which they worked. The other thing that we learned as they were telling their story is that the pandemic had offered challenges that provided for them the opportunity to learn more about some of the aspects or some of the details of the community and the problems which the people they work with faced. And then I think when Pablo began telling his story, that in a way, his telling that story was not only invited by what he and I were talking about, but you'll remember that Valeria added something to the conversation. And she was talking about the multiple disruptions that the pandemic caused in their work. So during the pandemic, as they were saying, they had to find new ways of doing what they were used to doing differently. And then I was very curious how they were able to be so creative and to do things differently. So I was really learning about them and keeping the quote in mind. I'm interested in staying close to the story that they are telling, trying to walk alongside them, looking at them, listening to them as each person is talking and adding a perception or version of the story. And one of the things that they said in response to how are you able to be so creative? What was highlighted for me was this notion of trust, that the families they worked with trusted them, their bosses, this is very important, the people in charge, the people with the power and the authority to make decisions about the clinic, about the center, trusted them. In terms of what they chose to do, even if it was unusual or not an ordinary part of their work. Like with Pablo writing the letter to the legal authorities in support of his client and explaining as best he could his client's situation. And then I think it was Valentina who pointed out that the center itself collectively had the ability to adapt to whatever problem or situation that they were dealing with. And that somehow there was an ethic, I'll call it, an ethic of helping to support and defend the rights of the people, the patients that they were working with. So I asked lots of questions. Again, I do not remember the specific questions that I asked or the order in which I asked them, but I was really trying to learn more about what they were saying. I didn't have ideas about how they should be telling me about the center or specific information that I needed, like what you might call facts or data or numbers. But I really wanted to learn what they thought was important for me to learn. And I say for me, but really for all of us to learn about them and their work. And so all along, as I commented more than once, I was very impressed with the team and the work that they had been doing, and that they were willing to be volunteered to tell their story and share their work in such an unusual setting with so many colleagues, some who knew them, many who didn't, listening, watching, and probably wondering how their colleagues in the Seminario might be judging them. And then the day before, when we were talking about some of the practicalities, or I was talking with Marcella and Camilla and Nicole, I asked Marcella if she thought that it might be helpful to have a reflecting process, which I think many of you may call a reflecting team. And my thought about that was that when we're having conversations with people, and particularly multiple people, like with the team or with a family or students in a classroom, that those who are not speaking are listening, but they're listening very actively by having their own inner or silent conversation with themselves, or perhaps someone else who's not in the room. So that there are always ghosts floating around in our conversations. Ghosts whose voices and whose presence in the past, in the room, in the future, influence how we think and how we live our lives as we interact with them and their voices. So it's always important for me to keep in mind that there's a richness in these inner voices. There's a richness in the conversations that people are having with themselves as they're listening. The same way with the team. You might remember at least a couple of times I might have turned to Pablo and said, "And what were you thinking as Valentina was talking?" Or maybe to Valentina, "What were you thinking as Alex was talking?" To invite those voices into the room. What were you thinking? What were your thoughts? What conversation were you having with yourself? And so members of the team shared some of those thoughts, and they were agreeable to having reflectors. And then we very quickly had a reflecting team. We had 3 people volunteer, and I chose the number 3 because of time. that I know sometimes it takes a long time to share reflections, and that we did not have the luxury of a long time. As well, the more people you have sharing so many thoughts and ideas, the more challenging it is for those who have been in the spotlight, like the team members, to remember what they've heard. Or something catches your attention that you really want to hold on to, but then also all of a sudden something else is said that kidnaps your attention. So I chose 3, and I said I would like for each person to offer one thing, one reflection. Again, to keep it manageable for people watching and listening. And not only for the team, but also for me, for Carla, who is still translating all of us, and for those of you who were watching and listening via Zoom. The reflections, I thought, were very interesting. They were different, but there was a thread, a connection. You can't see, I'm talking with my hands, you can't see my hands. There was a connection of a thread running through the reflections. And the connection that I saw was respect for and admiration for the team and their work. Not only the work that they were doing, but their commitment. So they were all, the 3 reflectors were feeling very supportive of the team. Let's see, somewhere I wrote down a word from each reflector. I apologize for not being more organized with my notes. Let's see, Patricia began by congratulating the team for their hard work and how they were so positively able to adapt with their patients during the pandemic. And then I think it was maybe Paulina who mentioned her emotions that she had while listening. And she highlighted how complex the situation was. And talked a little bit about what they were dealing with. And then I think it was Karina who said that her perspective is where the team's strength comes from, is the team's biggest support. That in other words, the doing of the work and the response from their other colleagues, from their bosses, from their patients, the family members, the community members, responses were affirming and supportive of what they were doing and gave them strength, if I'm remembering that correctly. And that there was a sense that the team was giving people, I think the word solutions was used in English, solutions for something they had been looking for a long time. So the reflectors were really highlighting the creativity, the strength, and the good work that the team was doing. And I thought, as I was listening to the team telling their story and talking into the reflections, how the team was really illustrating for us or telling a story that touched upon what I had been talking about in terms of us being human beings working with other human beings. And for me, that's one of the most important things of what I do, whether it's with you collectively, with the team, or with the people I work with on an everyday basis. We're human beings, we're people who want to be respected, be able to offer our opinions, particularly with those who have some influence over how we live our lives. And often I talk about it in a very ordinary way, which sounds like it might minimize what I'm referring to, but for me, it really highlights it. And I call it having good manners. And I have a sign. Let me grab it real quick. So Carla, will you translate this if you can see it?
Arlene,
Yes.
Carla, she can hear you. Probably you have to choose English in the interpretation.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I was on English. Can you hear me now? Okay. One time I was in northern Norway, where the idea of the reflecting team was developed. And I was working at a community organization with people who work with the community and with families in the community and do a lot of work in people's homes. And this sign was hanging on the wall. And it really caught my attention. And I commented on it. And I liked it so much. And I guess I commented on it so much that they decided to give it to me as a gift. And I have really valued it. Because for me, it captures, as I said, often other people use words better than I do, or that say what I'm thinking or want to express in a way better than I do. So I keep it behind me and I share it a lot. So then I came back and with the team after the reflections, and I invited them, or I asked them to please talk with each other about what they were thinking as they had listened. Because at that point, it wasn't important that they tell me or tell you what they were thinking. What's important is that they're able to talk with each other about what they heard or about what they thought they heard and what thoughts and ideas that was triggering for them. However, what they did mostly was each person shared something, which was fine because they shared it and their teammates could hear it. And then we had just a few minutes left. And I wanted to provide you opportunities to talk with each other. And I ask you if you would think about how you would describe what you thought the team and I did, including the reflectors, and how it connected or did not connect with what I had been saying earlier that morning as I was in the privileged position of having the stage to talk. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, to think about that now. What you remember from your experience of yesterday, and what you would like to ask about it, your questions, or what comments you may have, or descriptions you may have of how you would describe it. Excuse me, I'm sniffing a little. And while you're thinking, for those of you who are new today and were not here yesterday, would you just raise your hand so I can see you? And I'm going to move my screen. I see many faces of people who were here yesterday. We're missing more than 20 people who were here yesterday. But I don't see anyone raising their hand. Anyone here? Well, Letitia, of course. Thank you, Letitia, for helping me. Okay, I'm going to move to another screen because you may be raising your hand and I don't see it. So Estefano was here yesterday or not? I see many faces that I recognize and names. Okay, thank you. So I invite you to share whatever you would like to share about yesterday, the day, the whole day, or the conversation with the team and the reflecting process. Can be a comment, a description, a critique, a question. Shall I select a volunteer? Is someone volunteering? I have to click to change my screen so I can see.
I would like to make a comment on that.
Okay, Sonia.
Okay.
Okay, Sonia, please.
In Spanish or in English? I don't know. In Spanish is better?
I think it's probably better for the group, and then Carla can translate for me. Thank you.
Me llamó la atención la forma como el grupo frente a una situación de emergencia podía buscar formas creativas para solucionar una situación. Y eso me conectó con un trabajo que que hemos hecho sobre profesores en tiempos de pandemia y cómo ellos significan su trabajo. Y también los profesores, frente a esta situación que de un momento a otro cerraron las escuelas y tuvieron que buscar formas de llegar a sus alumnos, junto con tener tensiones y estrés, ellos mismos se dieron cuenta después de transcurrido este encierro que podían llegar a tener tanta creatividad. Ellos se asustaron de sí mismos, más que asustarse, ¿cómo podríamos decir? Se sorprendieron al verse que podían ser creativos en situaciones de emergencia.
Thank you, Sonia.
También
Thank you.
quería decir algo.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay,
Valeria.
and then I'll respond. Okay, is it Valeria who?
Sí.
Okay, Valeria, please.
Muy respecto a lo que dice la profesora Sonia, mi profesora en la universidad. Profe, a mí me pasó que me llevó al momento en que estábamos trabajando en la pandemia. Desde mi espacio laboral en ese momento estaba dirigiendo equipos de tratamiento en adicciones. Nos enviaron a la casa, como en todos lugares me imagino, a cuarentena, y tuvimos que trabajar reinventándonos bastante en las formas de llegar a las personas. Entonces me tocó mucho trabajar con mis colegas como en esta sensación de abrir caminos en las formas de hacer nuestro trabajo. Creo que me hace mucho sentido cuando tenemos que hablar de lo que pasó, el que recién ahí nos damos cuenta de lo que fuimos capaces de hacer. Y salimos un poco de esa zona de estructura, de cómo hay que hacer, por ejemplo, la psicoterapia, cómo hay que trabajar en el ámbito clínico. Y siento que cuando uno logra como conversarlo y mirarlo, se logra dar cuenta de que sí es posible hacer las cosas desde las necesidades de quienes estamos ayudando. Eso quería compartir, porque en ese minuto muchos de mis compañeros tenían miedo de que si lo que estaban haciendo estaba bien, era lo que había que hacer, porque salían un poco del rol o de este concepto de ser el terapeuta, sin un box, sin un encuadre, llegando desde otra manera. Eso quería compartir, Harleen.
Thank you, Valeria. And I see a connection between what you were saying and what Sonia was saying. And a connection with something that I was trying to highlight for all of you yesterday, and that is the importance of taking time to pause and step back and to reflect on your work, to think about what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it, and what you're learning from it. And I think the team's talking for them was a beautiful example of what can come when they had the luxury of their team sitting together and sharing, even if it was in such a public way. And then I think also, Valeria, with you as a member of the team, and then Sonia as a member of the larger group, how Sonia was thinking, having her own conversation. And I would imagine that there's some things that she and others who were listening are thinking about regarding their own work and what they might be able to do differently. I think both what Sonia and Valeria were saying highlights the importance of not just doing something because this is the way the book says or the teacher says we should do it. Not doing something because we've always done it this way. But to be flexible and to be able to adapt to the situation facing you. Because I think, as I was hopefully pointing out yesterday, that we in life are very complex. No one person, no one family, no one relationship, although you may see similarities between it and others, they're really not alike. They're unique. And it's the uniqueness. And how this team was able to let us be able to experience and learn about some of their uniqueness. So again, Sonia and Valeria, thank you. Now, is there someone else who would like to ask a question or make a comment or share your experience of yesterday?
Hola, buenos días. A mí me gustaría,
I've got to find you on my screen.
espero que se escuche.
Bastian.
Sí,
Okay, I'm still not finding you, but go ahead. I'm listening to you. I'm just looking.
mi reflexión tiene que ver principalmente con la relación que se pueda dar entre lo que experimentó este equipo en términos de deber apelar a una creatividad mayor a la habitual, probablemente, o a espacios de flexibilidad que antes no tenían considerados, el cambio en su dinámica de trabajo y esta sensación que no es solo de ellos, ¿cierto?, sino de todos probablemente de cansancio. Y me quedó dando vuelta qué relaciones podría haber entre el cambio de funcionamiento y el cansancio, entre la creatividad como estrategia y el cansancio que eso pueda generar o pueda aliviar, versus el cansancio que genera la rutina, o más bien esta práctica que a veces se hace irreflexiva de repetir un patrón de funcionamiento ya conocido y tradicional. El cansancio para mí es un tema importante porque en relación al funcionamiento de los equipos, sabemos que una de las cosas que ocurre, que no necesariamente algo negativo, es la alta rotación de profesionales, en que cuando alguien lleva un tiempo se mueve y se traslada a otros espacios que pueden ser más confortables. Pero a propósito de la experiencia del equipo de ayer, no logro todavía atar los cabos y por eso lo planteo, porque quizá en este espacio colectivo pueda ser más fácil de revisar. ¿Cómo podemos contribuir a que ese cansancio sea un cansancio agradable, como el que uno tiene después de hacer un ejercicio, por ejemplo, que le gusta, versus ese cansancio agotador y más bien desesperanzador, como el de Sísifo, ¿cierto? Como de subir la roca infinitas veces sin lograr resultados. Principalmente la reflexión tiene que ver en esa relación entre creatividad, cambio, rutina y cansancio.
No, the translation's good. So, Sebastian, gracias. You say something very important, as both Sonia and Valeria have talked about. And the word tiredness and the idea of being tired and its connection with creativity is very interesting. Because we often think, oh, to be creative requires lots of energy. Like you say, exercising requires lots of energy. But how many people comment after a hard exercise or a long run or walk or swim, talk about how energized they feel? So it sounds kind of crazy that in a way, what you might think of making yourself more tired or requiring more energy ends up being the strengthening solution to what you're dealing with. And I think that's a challenge for all of us to think about. That sometimes when we're so tired, for whatever reason, of our work, of our colleagues, frustrated with our colleagues, frustrated with our patients, feeling unsuccessful, how can we gain the energy to be creative? I think one thing, and it would be different for each person, but for me, what's very important is talking with my colleagues, sharing a challenge with my colleagues. There's a saying that one colleague of mine says, and that a problem shared is a problem cut in half. Not that the person you're talking with will give you an answer or a solution, but there's something in being able, I think, to express ourselves and to share with other people that's very important. And that's what the team was doing yesterday. So again, Valeria, Sonia, Sebastian, thank you. We have someone else who would like to say something. And all of a sudden I realized that if I just stay on the same screen, the voice and the picture.
Yo, Arlene.
Yeah.
Jan.
Jean. Hi, Jean.
Ayer me quedé con un comentario guardado en reserva desde ayer. Y también una colega, Patricia, en el chat lo estaba mencionando insistentemente. Y es que ha aparecido con mucha frecuencia la palabra curiosidad. Y el comentario que me quedó guardado desde ayer es que la palabra curiosidad está estrechamente emparentada, relacionada, o derechamente proviene de curar, que es cuidar. Y yo he encontrado que la perspectiva tuya, tu modelo, es muy cuidadoso. Para cuidar se requiere tener la intención de sanar. O sea, no es una teoría. La intención de sanar no es una teoría, es una disposición emocional de ayuda, de acogida, de acompañamiento. Así que, por lo tanto, desde ese punto de vista, la curiosidad no sería mera atención, sino que sería una atención dirigida al cuidado de un otro que está padeciendo, que está sintiendo dolor. Y yo he encontrado, como te digo, tu perspectiva muy cuidadosa. Y también se lo decía al equipo ayer, al equipo que presentó desde el CESAM, que los noté un equipo muy cariñoso y muy cuidadoso. Y pienso que seguramente eso impulsa a que desarrollen flexibilidad, ¿no? Para poder ir al encuentro. O sea, el que está, entre comillas, sano puede ir y amoldarse al enfermo, ¿no? Al que está sufriendo. Así que eso, ese era mi comentario. Muchas gracias.
So thank you. I will call them the C words, or at least in English, it's a C. Curiosity and caring. And then I will add a third C word, contagious. That I think curiosity and caring can be contagious, like a cold, but positive. We can catch it. Another C word, we can catch it from someone else. And I hope that what you just said, Jean, is also something that the team members experienced. That in my being curious about them and their work, that hopefully they became more curious about themselves and each other and what they do together. I hope. It connects with what I was saying at the very beginning of yesterday morning, when I said what my expectations were. Not that there were particular things about how to practice that you would learn, or particular ideas or theories that you would take with you, but that this would be an opportunity for people to step back. And now to use the word that you were highlighting, Jean, to be curious about themselves, about their work and what they're doing, and to think about it and what you can learn when you stop and pause and think. So thank you for adding that. These are all very exciting and very thought-provoking for me. So is there another person who would like to add something? Okay, so I'm going to surprise someone and ask her a question. And I'm going to surprise, because I'm going to surprise Letitia from Paraguay, because she's listening to us and participating today, and she was not with us yesterday. But you were the one person that I'm very aware of who was not here yesterday, although there may be someone else. So what are some of the things that you're thinking or curious about, Letitia, or that have caught your attention as I've been talking? And you may speak in español. Dice en español.
Bueno, gracias, Harleen. La verdad es que con la descripción que habías hecho de lo que vivieron ayer, por supuesto que como describían ahora me despertó mucha curiosidad, pero por sobre todo me gustaría resaltar la imagen que tuve como de algo que sucedió de manera muy, no sé si la palabra sería artesanal, como cuidadosa, escuchando cada una de las voces. Tenía la imagen como de cuando uno va uniendo las partes de un patchwork y va armando una gran tela con diferentes, creo que esta es una metáfora bastante utilizada en estas ideas, ¿no? De que la voz que pueda ser, por supuesto, única, pero por sobre todo va creando como una imagen cada vez más compleja de la misma situación. Y lo que yo pensaba en relación a eso es que muchas veces, no sé si hay alguien que compartiría esta visión, nuestros consultantes o cuando estamos en una necesidad de resolver una situación crítica o que nos angustia mucho, llegamos a las conversaciones con esta necesidad de encontrar la salida, encontrar la solución, encontrar la respuesta. Y este ritmo y esta manera de ir colectando cada una de las voces, las visiones, en sí mismo el proceso, ¿no? Es como si fuera que va generando posibilidades que necesitamos dejar que emerjan. Entonces, en eso estaba pensando también, ¿no? En cómo muchas veces nuestro diálogo interno, lo comentaban en el chat también, que puedan ser prejuicios o la misma angustia de encontrar la salida a una solución, a una situación, nos puede obstaculizar para vivir un proceso como esto. Eso es lo que estaba pensando, Harleen. Muy rico lo que describieron realmente. Una pena que no pude participar ayer.
Well, thank you for those thoughts. And I think what Letitia just said is an example of you can be curious about what another person is thinking, and they will have their own inner conversation and thoughts about what you, whoops, I'm sorry, I forgot to silence my phone. So it's kind of like when you're meeting with a client. We don't live with our clients. We don't know everything about them. We only get a glimpse, a real quick view, or a real short version of a story. And so Letitia only heard very little about yesterday. Yet she had a very rich conversation with herself. So for me, it's an illustration of how all the details are not important. If someone wants to tell you all the details, that's fine. Give them the time to tell the details, because for some reason that's their style, their way of talking. That's important for them. But it's okay that we each hear and listen differently, and we each tell our stories differently. So Letitia, thank you. Okay, so let's see, Marcella, we had a program for today, right? An agenda. I need to look at our time. How are we? Okay. How are we on time? Are we doing okay, Marcella?
Yes, we are okay.
Okay, now we have an agenda where I was supposed to begin by talking about collaborative practices. Well, I think I've been doing that, but maybe not in the way that you expected by lecturing. And then next on the agenda is continuing with the conversation that I had with the team yesterday. Are there any new members of the team here today who were not here yesterday? Let's see. Alexander, help me. Where are you?
Está Alexander, Valentina, Pablo y Javiera. Si pueden levantar la mano o hablar, así Jarlín los encuentra más rápido.
Hola, por acá, Javiera.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Hola.
So, are there
Por
any
acá.
other members of your team here today who were not here yesterday?
No, no, solamente estamos nosotros. De hecho, faltó uno de ayer, porque estaba con dificultades,
Oh,
estaba con trabajo.
okay. Yeah, I knew that there would be some members who would not be able to come today. So I'm going to ask you, what was it like for you being in what I call the spotlight, with so many people listening to your stories, to your team, wondering what they might be thinking? And did you have any good dreams last night, or did you have some nightmares?
Por mi lado, bien, siempre lo vi como una oportunidad para el equipo, así que estaba súper entusiasmada de poder participar dentro de esta instancia. Ok. ¿Lo repito, Carla?
Something else?
Yo
Okay.
quisiera agradecer el espacio que se nos dio ayer de compartir nuestras experiencias individuales en relación a los desafíos que tuvimos que vivir como equipo en pandemia, y de cómo cada experiencia individual al final teníamos un punto en común que nos unía. Creo que fue muy, muy provechoso para el equipo haber participado ayer y las reflexiones que están saliendo hoy.
Bueno, en lo personal, a mí me parece que muchas veces trabajamos como una máquina y tal vez no nos damos cuenta de todo lo que hacemos, ¿no? Es como el objetivo central es sacar la pega adelante y todo. Y yo, en realidad, cuando Javiera me invitó a este espacio, en realidad venía con las ganas de aprender, de adquirir nuevas herramientas, como lo decía el día de ayer. Y la verdad las cosas que el hablar de lo que uno hace por otros y por uno mismo también a su vez, porque esto de trabajar en el área social, en lo psicológico también, tiene mucho que ver con las cosas personales de uno también, ¿no? Creo que es de suma importancia poder hablar lo que uno siente, lo que a uno le pasa. Y la verdad las cosas que fue un espacio para mí de verdad muy bueno, importante. Creo que esto no lo había, creo que esto de alguna u otra forma lo había conversado con algún integrante del equipo, pero no con todos. Y ahora, bueno, exponer estas situaciones para mí igual fue como importante, porque yo en general como que trabajo, separo las cosas, lo que está en el trabajo queda en el trabajo, y los de familia o los de esparcimiento damos continuidad a eso, ¿ya? Más bien me sentí bastante cómodo en el espacio. Y agradecer este espacio también para poder exponer experiencias que tal vez otros equipos o partes de personas que trabajan en equipos tal vez vivieron situaciones de similares características. Importante escribirlo. Como equipo no hemos escrito las experiencias que hemos vivido. Yo creo que ese fue un desafío que planteó ayer usted en la conversación. me quedé reflexionando en eso, en que debe de quedar por lo menos un escrito, algo sobre la experiencia de equipo.
Well, and
Te escucho.
there is a journal, International Journal of Collaborative Dialogic Practice, that's in English and in Spanish. So I think I can have some influence over having your story published.
Mm.
So you said something just now, Pablo, that you also said yesterday that I was very curious about and still am. You said that you've been able to separate work and home or family life. How are you able to do that? Because that's something that I hear professionals talk about, how they bring work home or they bring home to work.
Sí, escucho también a muchas personas y colegas en algún momento que se dan mucho trabajo para la casa. En realidad, yo separo las cosas porque tiene que ver con mi autocuidado. Yo creo que es re importante tener un autocuidado, sobre todo cuando se trabaja en salud mental con temáticas tan potentes, con temáticas tan potentes que van apareciendo en los relatos. Entonces, yo creo que eso lo compartimos. Nosotros, ayer Javiera y parte del equipo también compartía que tenemos espacios, distintos espacios. Equipo infanto-adolescente tiene su reunión, equipo adulto también, y el día viernes tenemos una reunión, digamos, en conjunto donde están ambos equipos, y es ahí donde nosotros exponemos las situaciones que pasan dentro de lo que significa la dinámica de funcionamiento con los pacientes. Entonces, ese espacio yo lo apropié y dije, bueno, si se da este espacio, y un espacio que lo estamos practicando hace ya bastante tiempo, entonces es ahí donde se tienen que cerrar y donde se tienen que tomar ciertas decisiones. Entonces, ahí, bueno, yo aprendí que tiene que ver con mi autocuidado también. Y yo creo que todos debemos practicar el autocuidado. Hablábamos ayer también de una pausa. ¿Qué ¿Cómo lo estoy haciendo? ¿Cuál es la resonancia que me hace desde cuando yo atiendo? ¿Cómo me llega esa información? Hay una serie de situaciones que uno tiene que ir evaluando. Pero más bien fue una toma de decisión por un autocuidado. Pese a que he hecho la reflexión también, pese a que es una misma persona quien tiene distintos roles y que a veces eso se mezcla. Pudiese pasar, pero trato de separarlo muy bien, cosa de que no me estrese más de lo que no corresponde. ¿Se escucha? ¿Se entiende? Ya. Yo escucho muy bajito acá en mi celular, escucho muy bajito, pero...
Okay. Thank you. So I think that it's the value.
No sé si respondo, Arlen.
I missed that, the end. Oh, okay. And I was backing up and, okay, so Valeria was. So somebody was wanting to say something. Valentina.
Sí, hola, ¿se escucha? Ok. Bueno, en relación a las reflexiones que hemos visto, creo que fue súper interesante lo que pasó ayer, porque en el diálogo nos dimos cuenta que habían cosas que no habíamos pensado, que no nos habíamos preguntado antes. Por ejemplo, el tema de nuestras fortalezas como equipo era algo que no nos habíamos planteado mucho. Como decía el Pablo, de repente trabajamos como máquina para sacar adelante los objetivos, responder a las necesidades de los pacientes, pero sin reflexionar mucho sobre por qué lo hacemos. Y finalmente, a través de las reflexiones donde uno le da sentido a lo que hace. Entonces, creo que el espacio nos ayudó un poco a darnos cuenta de eso, de que tenemos fortaleza y de dónde las sacamos. Y además contábamos con el apoyo de todo el equipo, de nuestros superiores, que fue fundamental también en sacar adelante el trabajo, en esto de innovar, de adaptarnos y de ser creativos frente a un escenario adverso en el que nos encontramos.
Thank you. So I'm sitting here thinking that the experience that you had with each other yesterday, or maybe the experience we all had, is what I want to do when I'm having, let's say, helping conversations with clients, with patients, with students, with colleagues. So how can you have conversations in which you can be curious, in which you can let all these ideas you might have about the other person or people kind of float off to the side, out of sight? So that you can fully attend and be present with the other person or the other people. Okay, so when I talk about collaboration and dialogue, people often ask, well, again, how do you do it? What does it look like? I hope you are experiencing how to do it and what it looks like. So I do think that my work is informed by some what I call conceptual assumptions that I said yesterday are threads, are pieces of postmodernism, social constructionism, and hermeneutics. But there's some things that they have in common. And one that I mentioned yesterday is how knowledge is perceived from each perspective. And that knowledge is perceived as something that we participate in creating, that we do with other people. That whatever participants are learning, whatever the team members are learning through these experiences yesterday and today, is not something that each one is creating all by themselves, but it's being created as they are interacting with the experience that they are having and what other people are saying. Remember, I used the example of the clouds yesterday and how we have these clouds floating in the sky. And this cloud may look like a dog. And this cloud may look like a house. But when those clouds begin to meet each other, for one person looking at them, it may look like an elephant, the new cloud. It may look like something, a tree, but that we're each interpreting and creating from our interpretations something hopefully new and different for us that will be useful. And so for me in my work, that comes through developing particular kinds of relationships and particular kinds of conversations. And I call it not having a set of skills and techniques, but taking a particular position that I call a philosophical stance. And I call it a philosophical stance because I think my work is more informed by philosophical rather than theoretical perspectives. And this distinction is useful for me. And I make this distinction because I think in our work, because we are dealing with people and we are people, human beings, and we're dealing with life, that we're really dealing with people's different philosophies of life. How people think about themselves, how people think about others, the world we live in, what they're trying to accomplish. So like with Pablo, I use the word value and saying that he has this value of the importance of being able to separate family and professional life. But it's part of his overall philosophy of life, of what's important for him, and the importance of protecting each and away from the other. So I think my philosophy of therapy, of professional practice, influences the kinds of relationships and conversations that I want to have. And I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the kind of relationship you want to develop with the people that you work with, whether they're your patients, people who live in your community, your colleagues, your friends, or your family members. That you want to develop relationships with people where they feel like they are important for you, that you are genuinely interested in them. And I say genuinely because you can't quote unquote fake it or pretend that you're interested in a friend or interested in a client's story. You have to really believe that what they have to say, the experience they want to tell you about, you have to really believe that that's important. And that's part of a philosophy that you develop. That's part of a body of knowledge that you have created for yourself. And another way of thinking about it is that it's a mindset shift. It's a shift in the way you think about yourself, the people you work with, what you do together, and how you do it. And it's a big shift because it's not the way that most of the world or people in the world think or act or work. And it's not the primary knowledge that's passed down in most textbooks or lectures in our university classes or on a YouTube presentation. That most people are trying to offer something that they're trying to sell you. They want you to buy. They want you to think this way or that way. So although I have developed a way of working that is useful for me, that allows me to be, at least most of the time, the person I want to meet. I can't say that I'm perfect and walk my talk or talk my walk all the time, because I don't. Some of you may have experienced this. But I think I can genuinely and truthfully say, most of the time, I try. I try to be the person I want to meet. I try to be the person I want to be. Because I have found that allows the uniqueness, the creativity, the difference in other people to be present and to be okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay that if your colleagues do not think like you, or your clients, your patients do not think like you, or your students do not do the assignment exactly the way you wanted them to. It's okay. What's important is to be able to learn about that difference and what they do that's different. Because most of us don't like to be blamed or judged or scolded or told that the way we're living our life is wrong, that you should live it this way. So it began to be very important for me to be able to have conversations with other people in which I showed curiosity, in which I showed that I was genuinely interested in them, in which I did not judge them with my eyes or my words or my gaze, and in which I treated them in a way that signaled, that said, I value you. And so I was once supervising a psychologist who was working with a man that she obviously did not like. She did not value. She was very judgmental about his lifestyle. And I said to her, I said, I think you are being unethical. And she was shocked because she didn't think of herself as unethical. I said, I think it is unethical to work with someone that you do not like. Would you want your therapist who you think is trying to help you to not like you, to be sitting there judging you and your lifestyle, the way you do your work, the way you're a father, the way you're a sister. No, you don't want someone who's judging you, who doesn't like you, pretending to be helping you. So I think it's important that you have to find something about the person or the people that you're working with that you like. And sometimes that's hard. But I have found that if you pay careful attention to what people are telling you, their version of their story that they want to tell, that you can become very interested in it. And it's like reading a very good book. Oh, I can hardly wait to get to the next chapter or turn the page to find out what's next. This is interesting. And so I find that's helpful to think about my clients, the people I work with, a therapy client or a student, that it's like I'm reading a new book and I want to be interested in this new book and find something of value in this new book. So a colleague of mine that you may have heard about in some of your training, called Tom Anderson, from Northern Norway, who was a member of the origination of the reflecting team. He said something that I put into my words, and I say, you create the people sitting in front of you. You participate, you influence how they're going to act, what they're going to say, by how you are, by your glances, by your eyes, your shoulders, how you use your hands, the words you choose. And that it's very easy to not only participate in creating the person we think is sitting in front of us, but to continue doing that. Excuse me. And to ask questions that verify your interpretation or your understanding of them. So you don't need to ask questions to verify something. I ask questions to what I call clarify. And by that, I mean, I ask questions so that I'm understanding more fully, or the best I can, what another person wants me to understand. Which reminds me of a question at the end of the day yesterday. Someone asked me what I talk about listening and hearing, and the similarities are differences. In the psychotherapy fields or theories, a lot is written about listening and the importance of listening very carefully, having eye contact when you're talking with people. I think listening is something that's very interactive. That to listen to you, I have to give you space and room to talk. I must ask you questions. I must make comments to invite you to continue talking, to say more about what it is that you are telling me so that I can better understand it. And that's what I call hearing. Am I hearing? Am I understanding what you as team members, what you in this seminar want me to understand and want me to hear? Now, yesterday with the team, I would be foolish if I said I totally understood everything everybody was saying. Because I didn't. Totally impossible. It would take much more time and talking with each person more in a more focused way. Plus, I was going to say it might be more helpful if we spoke the same language. But one of the things about my not speaking Spanish is I have to listen to you more carefully. And I find that I will hear you say a word that sometimes I think is a different word. And so sometimes I misunderstand because I wasn't listening very carefully to your Spanish or to your particular accent. And it's the same when we speak the same native or everyday language. It's very easy to assume we know what someone means when they use a word like tired. What in the world does tired mean? It means so many different things to so many different people. And so to really talk about tired, you have to really explore the meaning of that. When you go home and you're tired, but your children expect you to play ball with them, how do you do that? What is that like? There's so many things to what we do that may seem small or little, or that we never think about, that are really, really important. And that's why I cannot talk enough about the importance of slowing down in our conversations and our work with others, not assuming that you understand too quickly what another person wants you to understand or hear. So listening is listening to the words, listening carefully. But I think that it's understanding the meaning of what someone is saying that helps you catch it. And I think that it also helps you develop a very good memory for other people and their stories. Again, back to a good book that you've read that you really, really like and you really remember it. What was it about that book, do you think, that helped you remember it? We each have very different responses to that question. Okay. So I've said that the philosophical assumptions inform how I think about relationships and conversations. And I think that I want to invite the other person to engage with me into what I call a mutual or a shared inquiry. In other words, the team was not giving me something to put under a microscope and study, but hopefully they felt we were looking at something together and trying to understand it together. I hope. We don't know for sure, but I hope. But that's what I hope to do with people, that we're looking at something together and that we're looking at it perhaps in a way, because there are multiple people involved or people involved that weren't involved before, that helps us look at it or begin to look at it or to think about it slightly differently. So the first thing has to do with mutual or shared inquiry. The next thing has to do with that we're creating new knowledge together. The client I'm working with, the family member I'm working with, the student I'm working with, we are creating new knowledge together. I'm not putting it in their head. That's totally impossible to do. So we're creating new knowledge together, which is a combination of their expertise and my expertise. So we're doing what I call relational expertise. In our relationship, we're sharing and we're intertwining the different expertise that we each bring. And that I'm trusting that each, like yesterday, that each team member is an expert on their team, from their perspective, from their position in it. That none of us, including me or each of you who are watching and listening, can be an expert on this team and tell them what to do or how to do it. We're not there, we're not living it. So I call that relational expertise, and the importance of focusing on the client as the expert on their life, the therapist as the expert on his or her practice. And then I mentioned yesterday that I learned so many things in talking about people, about their experiences of successful therapy, unsuccessful therapy, therapists they would like to meet again, and therapists that they hope they would never meet again. And I call it being public, being open. That, as I said yesterday, that clients often wonder what their therapist or what their team members, what the social worker really thinks of them. As I said yesterday, what is the team member saying to the lead team member? What story are they writing in their notes? What are they telling their boss? These things don't have to be secret. So it made me think of the real importance of being able to share with others what I was thinking, as I did yesterday as we were talking, as I had a thought, an idea, or something just, oh, I'm talking too fast. Okay. So I say, let's see, yo dice, Harlini, despacio. I'm saying Harlene this. Okay. So mutual or shared inquiry, creating knowledge together, the importance of client and therapist expertise, the importance of being public, this whole idea of uncertainty, that when we're doing something together, when we're creating something together, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot that we don't know. We can have an idea about what we want to create, what kind of solution we're hoping for. Like yesterday, I did ask the team, did you have a chance to talk about, and what do you hope will come from our talking together today? What are your expectations? What are you hoping? Not that we will achieve that, but that gives me a sense of where people want to go. And we'll try to go there. But I can't have an idea ahead of time regarding what that will look like. And I didn't ask each team member this question. And the question would be, what did you expect when we started talking? What did you hope we would accomplish in our talking with each other? And what happened? And how did it or not meet your expectation? Were there some surprises that were nice surprises? Were there some surprises that you didn't like? So we have to be open. Let's see, somebody used, let's see. I think it was John who said something that made me think about the word flexibility, of being able to be flexible, being able to let go of an expectation that we might have so that we can be open to participating and creating a new, a surprising outcome. And that requires being uncertain. Being uncertain is being able to be flexible and to deal with surprises. And to be able to do what you need to do. Like Pablo, who told us about the woman he was working with, who had the situation with the police and the legal authorities, and she didn't know what to do. Most likely he could not have predicted when they started talking that that would be the quote unquote problem that she wanted help with, and that he would be able to help her. He translated her story into a language that the legal authorities could understand. That's one way of thinking about it. The other thing on my list, so let's see, mutual assured inquiry, client expertise, creation of knowledge, being public, uncertainty, that's 5. I may be leaving one out. Another one that we can call number 6 has to do with what I call mutual transformation. That we often think of ourselves as therapists who are supposed to change or create change for other people. And we forget that our clients are influencing us and that we are changing from our experiences with our clients and with our colleagues. And that often change or transformation is thought of as something that's very obvious, very noticeable. You can say, this was the question that changed everything. Aha. This is what made me have a new thought. But that's an interpretation of our experience. There'd be multiple ways in which you could understand having a new idea or a new solution or a new way of thinking about your team or your participation in your team. There's not just one answer. And that change is not always something really, really big that's real noticeable, but it can be something very small that can end up being very powerful. And whether or not there's change in therapy, that is something for the therapist to think about, but the therapist should not be the evaluator of whether therapy or the team was helpful or not. Your client, your patient, your student should be the evaluator. Because if the persons we're working with, if the people in this seminar, if you do not think that this was a valuable use of your time, if you cannot leave here with one thought that maybe you didn't have before you came, or with something to continue thinking more about than you have in the past, then maybe it wasn't valuable. But you, the consumer, the client, is the judge of that. So those are some of the things I was thinking about, Marcella, as I was thinking about the item on the agenda called knowledge as a relational and natural process. That our professional work, in a way, should be very much like everyday life. Very natural, very normal. We're not the therapist sitting up here in the big chair or the chair of knowledge. We're not the therapist with all the correct ideas about how to be a child, about how to be a woman in the world, about how to be a father, about how to be a boss. We don't know any better than anybody else how to do those things. And then people often say, okay, so what if you have an idea? Or what if you think you know something that would be helpful for someone else to know? Can I share that? I say, well, of course you can share it. You can share anything you think you know. But what's very important is to keep in mind something that I said yesterday about social constructionism. That is something that you think you know or might know. And to consider why you think it's important or might be useful for another person to hear from you. In other words, what is your intent with offering it? Equally important is what is the timing in which you offer it? Are you offering it and it does not fit at all with what they're talking about? That you interrupt their flow of thoughts? You interrupt the part of the story they're trying to tell you? What is the attitude or the tone with which you are offering it? And I think it's important that when you have a suggestion, that you try to offer it in English. The words I use are in a tentative or provisional way. In other words, I could say to a client, as we've been talking, I have been thinking of something that might be helpful if you would like to hear it. If you would like to hear it, I can share it with you. This also connects. I'm letting a person know that while they're talking, I have been thinking, and that I have something I can offer if they would like to hear it. I have some ice cream that I think is delicious. Would you like some? Yes, I love ice cream. I would love some of your ice cream. No, I don't want any ice cream right now. I would prefer a cup of coffee if you have it. So pay very careful attention when you think you know something that you think somebody else should know or think about in a similar way. Okay, so what I would like to do now, Marcella and Camilla, is give people, I didn't put my clock down in front of me, so I have no idea what time it is. And it's not on my screen.
Here is 12 o'clock.
Okay, so we have another hour or 2 more hours?
2 more hours. And it's okay to you to have a little break?
Okay, we'll have a little break. And then when we come back from the break, I would like for people to be in their conversation circles and share with each other some of the things that you've been talking about right now. What are some of the new questions that have evolved? And I will respond to what you bring back and to your questions and to some of the questions from yesterday that maybe I have not responded to yet. So how long a break?
15 minutes.
Okay, 15-minute break.
It's okay for everyone?
Sure, it's Saturday, 15-minute break. Okay, and I'll go get my...
Nos encontramos entonces a las 12:20, 19.
So we're coming back at 20 minutes after? Is that what you just said?
Yes, 15.
15. Okay.
15 minutos, 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes. Okay, I will go get a clock so I know what time it is.
Okay.
While you're taking a break.
See you then.
Okay. Okay, here we are again. So if you will go to your conversation clusters, Camilla and Maricela will put you in your conversation clusters and share with each other some of the things you've been talking with yourself about, thinking about, some questions you might have.
Camila, ¿estamos listas?
Estoy mandándolos ahora.
Ok. ¿Estamos de vuelta ya? ¿Todos? Harleen, we are all back. It's
Okay,
already-
I'm just sitting here thinking we needed more time.
Oh,
I say that because the group that I was a member of was just beginning to get into a very interesting and important conversation.
maybe they can continue talking with all of us.
Yes. So in the group, Sonia and Felipe were bringing up the fast changes in students in Chile and how if I understood it correctly. And Carla, are you able to translate for me? Yeah, if I understood it correctly, that students and a lot of citizens are rejecting authority.
Yes, it's right.
That there are a lot of changes happening very quickly. And a comment of how dialogue is very important, but it takes time.
Mhm.
And I can respond to that more later, but my guess is that is not only happening in Chile, but in other places in the world and in other South American countries. I wonder. So we also have people from Paraguay and Peru and Argentina. So I just wonder if this conversation is of interest to several people or most people, the shift in the questioning of or the rejection of authority. Which is something that I experience and have been experiencing for several years as I travel around the world. That people want to have a voice, they want to have input in decisions and policies that affect their lives. I mean, what is the biggest example in the world right now in terms of the conflict in Ukraine that I will say from my bias, Russia has initiated? And I think it's not only within countries in terms of political or civil things, but it's in the classroom, it's in the schools. I particularly see it in the schools in the United States where students question teachers, parents question the teaching, parents question the textbooks that the children are reading and want to have a say in what their children are being taught and how their children are being taught. So I connect that with the part of my philosophy of practice that people do want to have a voice. They want to be heard. They want to be respected. And it doesn't mean that we have to agree with them or do what they want or support what they want, but they have to feel that we are listening to them and that we are hearing them. And so Karina has said, is it time to change? Say more, Karina, what you're thinking about, please.
I think for the whole world, people are not do not agree with the way politicians are managing, and they are fed up. That's why everybody is going out to the streets, and everybody is questioning. Children, even children, are questioning. And I think we are in the 21st century, and it's time to find another way, because the way that we've been living together is not the best one. I mean, too many people suffer. I think this is not a political photo to talk about that, no? But we are human beings, and we all are very worried about the future of the planet, of the world. That's why sometimes people don't know exactly what they want to protest for, no? What they want, but they just go out and say, I'm not happy with this, so I have to do something. That's why so many, in many countries, because people want to, people, I think, are fed up with corruption, with all the way things, you know, are resolved. Like, for example, this war, the Ukrainian war is terrible. In this, we thought our 21st century was going to be better, no? But not. Instead, we are
Karina,
worse. I mean, some people, no, not.
Will you say what you're saying in Spanish, please, so people?
Okay. Ya, perdón.
It's important.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, digo que el mundo, o sea, todas las personas protestan, hay muchísima protesta en todo el mundo porque la gente ya se está harta de promesas, de cosas, de la corrupción, de la forma como los gobernantes gobiernan, pues, o sea, ya como diciendo, suficiente, ya no queremos más de esto. Mucha gente no sabe ni siquiera qué es lo que quiere. Yo creo que habría que crear una cosa nueva, ¿no? O sea, tenemos que hacer unos cambios nuevos, empezando, por ejemplo, por la educación. Educan para competir, como Maturana dijo una vez, no educan para servir, no educan con amor, no educan para que todos estemos mejor, no, educan para competir. Ya desde ahí estamos mal. Entonces, tiene que haber un cambio que quizás no se sepa exacto y se tendrá que ir dando, ¿no? Pero así como estamos, ¿cuáles son los resultados? Todo es una cosa negativa. En realidad no eso no debería conversarlo acá, porque bueno, ya es un tema político, ¿no? Pero ¿qué hacemos? ¿Qué hacemos? Eso es lo que pienso. Bueno, y después tenía otras preguntas.
Well, I think that part of this discussion that's so important is that what we're talking about is affecting people's lives, and that this is the context or the background that the people we work with in our therapy are coming from. And then I see that Jean has a question. What is the essence of what is the theoretical essence of collaborative dialogue perspective to this? Can you help me, Carla? Okay. So I guess for me, the theoretical connection with collaborative dialogue to what I just asked about and invited people to talk about is that this is the context, this is the world, this is the background that's influencing people's lives and influences how they think of their problems. For example, who they're blaming for their problems. So now mothers are not the big villains, politicians are, countries are. And I guess what I think about Felipe in terms of your comment about this practice takes time, it does. And it requires slowing things down. But I think when you can slow down enough to listen to the people speaking with you, whether they're students in a classroom or politicians in a meeting or patients in a clinic, and you are listening to try to hear and to try to understand, I think that makes a big difference for people. The feedback I get is that people feel valued. They feel important. And it doesn't mean that you have to agree with another person's perspective. But I think it's important to be respectful that that's their perspective. So Felipe, talk more if I can invite you. And I apologize for not introducing you earlier in terms of being with the University of Chile, and they are one of our sponsors for this seminar.
Sí, no, no, todo bien, no hay problema con eso de las presentaciones y todo eso. Y nada, me parece que es súper interesante el concepto del tiempo que aparece, porque claro, es fácil coincidir que todo evento participativo requiere tiempo, pero da la impresión de que la vuelta de la pandemia como que hace que la sensación de que venimos atrasados, ¿sí? Y como que falta tiempo o que tenemos que acelerar algo que hemos perdido. ya sea en cuestiones sociales o en cuestiones educativas o en cuestiones clínicas. Entonces, creo que el choque que se da con el tiempo es un desafío muy, muy interesante, pero me parece que también Arlene, con lo que nos comenta, nos está dando algunas pistas también de cómo aceptar y frenar eso para ganar ese tiempo que requiere el diálogo.
Time is important, and 2 days ago somebody was talking to me about time, and I said, well, they didn't have enough time to decide between two people for a position in an organization. And I said, time is a human construct. We've created the idea that we have to make this decision tonight. What's going to happen if we don't make this decision until tomorrow or next week? That's a very difficult one. I have a colleague in Japan who sent me an email about 2 weeks ago saying he's just written a paper on time. And I wrote him and asked him, as soon as it's in English, please send it to me. Because this is very important. We want everything to happen yesterday, quickly. We get impatient. But I didn't mean to detour the conversation. It's just that it came up in the small group. But it seemed important because it seems relevant to what we're all struggling with in our own personal lives and in our work. Ideas of voice, of power, of authority, of truth. So we're in a world. So somebody in the small group had also said, and let's see, it was, oh, I'm sorry. I think I see you now. Just a minute. It was Maria. Maria said that she was realized the huge responsibility that we have as therapists. And I think it's not only responsibility, but it's this very complex life and world that we live in, which maybe makes us feel responsible for so many things. But life seems to be getting more and more complex, at least here in the United States. Whose truth is right? And my truth is certainly not any more correct or right for you than your own. My truth is only helpful for me most of the time, not all the time. So I know there were lots of other things that people talked about, in their small groups, or comments or questions that you had. What else would some of us like the rest? Would some of you like the rest of us to know? So Sandra from Argentina.
Nosotros estuvimos reflexionando y teniendo en cuenta la importancia del escuchar de la escucha activa, de la necesidad de las personas de ser escuchadas y comprendidas. Yo hago la aclaración que yo no trabajo en la salud mental, no trabajo en salud, yo soy abogada de formación, trabajo como abogada de familias y trabajo como mediadora familiar. Entonces, estoy acá por eso, porque en una mediación nosotros también llevamos a cabo una conversación y el diálogo abierto, estoy haciendo la diplomatura con Jaco Seikula, y el diálogo abierto, las prácticas dialógicas, nos dan otras herramientas, otras maneras de abordar el conflicto de las familias. Entonces, me parece importante lo del tiempo, porque nosotros también trabajamos contra reloj y contra la ansiedad, no sé si tanto de las personas en conflicto, pero nosotros recibimos en nuestra mesa de mediación a las personas con el conflicto y a sus abogados. Entonces nosotros tenemos que armar un diálogo donde los incluyan. Entonces no sabemos si los más apurados o los más ansiosos son los abogados por irse de la negociación o de la mediación o las partes en conflicto. Así que ahí tenemos un tema de tiempos, porque los abogados nos dicen, bueno, no llegamos a un acuerdo, ya está, terminemos. Y a veces la mediación no llega a un acuerdo, pero sí transforma a las personas de tal manera que agradecen ser escuchadas y por ahí en ese momento no acuerdan, en ese momento no logran escuchar al otro, pero con el paso del tiempo sí logran reflexionar sobre lo que escucharon y llegan a entenderse aun cuando ya la mediación no terminó. Así que estuvimos reflexionando sobre esa escucha y esa escucha empática, además de activa. Porque de alguna manera, yo le decía a mis compañeros de grupo, que ellos venían todos de la salud, ellos tienen que generar una confianza en su paciente. Y nosotros, como mediadores, también tenemos que generar una confianza para que las partes, nosotros llamamos partes a las personas que vienen con el conflicto, se puedan abrir y puedan contar realmente lo que les pasa. Son personas que se están abriendo a nosotros y que terminan estando en una situación un tanto vulnerable cuando sacan a la luz esos conflictos. Así que nos parecía muy importante el tema de escuchar, de tomarse el tiempo para escuchar, y de que esta escucha sea, además de activa, empática. No sé si mis compañeros de grupo tienen algo más para agregar. Esto es lo que a mí me quedó de la conversación que tuvimos.
Thank you very much. That connects with a question from yesterday morning that Sonia asked. Is it possible to work one-on-one? And what I think is that what's important in the work that I do, the team that I trained with that started working in the 1950s, were working with extended networks. They would bring in all the family members, all the helpers, other people, whether it was a soccer coach or a priest or a neighbor, into the conversation. And that's where the idea of the importance of multiple voices are one of the ways in which it became to be so important and highlighted. That the more voices you have, the more perspectives you have, the more things you have to think about. And you begin to realize that not only do other people have different perspectives, but that each of us has multiple perspectives, multiple versions of the same story, the same experience. So, and Earl, I think it was yesterday I was talking about that often the other voices are ghost in the room, they're not present. And I do not think that we have to have everybody present all the time. An important question for me is, who should be talking when, where, about what, and with whom? So that the members of each conversation determine the membership of the next conversation and its focus. So it's like, yeah, it's that each conversation informs the next conversation in terms of who should be involved, who should be invited, and what's the topic, what's the agenda for the conversation. And it can't necessarily be planned step by step ahead of time. For example, one time I was doing a workshop in Beijing, China, and a woman volunteered to talk with me about something. Like rather than the team yesterday, it was one person. And she was the human resource director at a big company. And as she started talking, I asked her, was there anybody else in the room who knew about this situation? And she said, yes, that there were several people. And I said, well, do you mind just telling me who they are and how they're involved? And she happened to mention that a consultant to her organization was in the group of participants. And he had invited her to the seminar. And I said, well, tell me about your work with him. And so she began telling me about that. And I said, and you mentioned that your work with him has influenced some of the things that you are doing with some of the managers or department directors in the company. And you said some of them are here. So if they're managers or directors who are here who would like to join our conversation, please join us. And there happened to be 3. So they came up and we just made a circle. And as they began to mention other people in the company who were present, I invited them to the conversation. So it happened very spontaneously, but it was like yesterday, a collective storytelling where you had multiple perspectives of each person that was present about the changes that were happening and that seemed necessary in this particular company, and how at least these people were trying to influence it. So this reminds me that I often say in my teaching that I don't think of questions as requiring answers or being asked for an answer, but I think that questions provide opportunities for talking. So in terms of what Sandra was saying and what it invited me to talk about and share with you, is there another group that touched upon a similar content, a similar focus, a similar challenge, whether that's talking with 10 people or whether that's talking with one person. So, Jose, may I ask you a question? And you can say no if you prefer that I do not ask you a question. It's perfectly okay. Or I should tell you the question I'm going to ask you, and then you decide how you want to respond. And you can, no response.
Sí, claro.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious, what did your group talk about? What kind of topics interested them, or what kind of questions did they have?
Bien, bueno, aprovecho de saludar a todas, a todos. En nuestro caso, el grupo comentamos distintos aspectos de lo que el diálogo nos permite ir entendiendo a partir del caso o de la situación que veíamos ayer con el equipo del CESAM. Y en ese sentido, pudimos ir conversando con Sergio, con Pamela, con Sandra, si no me equivoco, de que la importancia que implica el cuidado en distintos niveles. El nivel personal, el nivel de equipo, el nivel institucional y comunitario. Y en ese sentido, el acompañamiento que existe entre esos niveles también está movilizado harto por los contextos en los que trabajamos. Pero, al mismo tiempo, cuando hablamos del cuidado que se requiere en los trabajos en los que hacemos, el diálogo que se tenía ayer, que se ha tenido el día de hoy, nos ha permitido mucho entender de que escuchar a otras personas sobre lo que nosotros hacemos en estos distintos niveles nos permite ir encontrando distintas respuestas que a veces las hemos tenido, digamos, presentes, pero a lo mejor no hemos hablado de ellas. Respuestas creativas para resolver situaciones, al mismo tiempo, fortalezas que a veces, como se decía hoy día, están, pero de algún modo no han sido dichas o comunicadas del todo. En este registro nosotros tuvimos nuestra conversación como grupo, y nos llamaba harto la atención también, yo refería harto como la idea de que es muy linda la idea de las voces, o del diálogo, o de estos fantasmas que están dando vueltas, ¿no es cierto? Porque hay cosas por ahí que de pronto no se han escuchado del todo, pero el diálogo permite que aparezcan. Y por ahí también aparecía una inquietud que yo reconozco, no hablo a nivel del grupo necesariamente, pero es una inquietud muy personal, que así como de pronto escuchamos estas voces que están, y que no siempre tenemos la oportunidad de escuchar, también me preguntaba mucho, yo les comentaba al grupo, por la voz del cuerpo. También hay un cuerpo que habla, un cuerpo que siente el malestar, que siente el cansancio, que siente el agotamiento. Entonces es interesante también que esa es una voz que también no siempre aparece, pero que está, como un fantasma.
Absolutely. one of those silent voices that's talking to us that we don't often hear. So I think what you are saying, Jose, and what your group was talking about is also emphasizing the importance of the spoken dialogue and the silent conversations that we have. And we don't often give others the opportunity to share their silent conversations with us. And we often don't take the opportunity to share our silent conversations with others. And the importance of keeping in mind that often as we're listening and trying to hear, we're talking with ourselves, as other people are, as they're listening to us. And that we never know how another person is hearing or understanding, or the meaning that they are attributing to our words or our glances or our hands. So thank you for letting me ask you a question about your group and for sharing and bringing up the important thing that our bodies talk. The people we work with, their bodies talk to them. So, Marcella, I've been going a little bit out of order for what we had thought we might do and what's written down in terms of questions, but I think it's very important to have lots of time for questions and comments. So let's see who else I can invite. Okay, let's see. Well, so many people only have their name on the screen and they're not there in person. So German, are you back with us? German Martinez?
Sí, aquí estoy.
Okay. So the group that you went to, what did y'all talk about? German and I were first in the same group, but we were the only two people in the group, and he speaks Spanish and I speak English. So they put us in other groups. So German?
Así es, sí. Bueno, hablamos principalmente, diría yo, hicimos varias reflexiones, entre ellas hablábamos bastante acerca de la falta del cuidado que existe del servicio institucional que sustenta los equipos como el del CESAM, y cómo era muy admirable cómo el equipo que escuchamos ayer, en el fondo habían sido capaces de cuidarse entre ellos mismos para cuidar a otros. Nos parecía que eso era una hazaña muy tremenda porque en general existe mucha falta de cuidados de parte de la institución con los profesionales, y eso muchas veces termina desmotivando mucho a los trabajadores para seguir haciendo lo que hacen. Y también conversamos acerca de esta tendencia que existe en general a entender la vida siempre desde la polaridad de lo bueno y lo malo, de la verdad o de la mentira, y de cómo eso también nos obliga a nosotros a asumir muchas veces, a cumplir con esta expectativa, y lo difícil que a veces es poder transmitir, digamos, que existen tantas verdades como puntos de vista, ¿no? Eso es muy importante desde la práctica, que los usuarios muchas veces nos piden asumir este rol de jerarquía y a veces nos cuesta mucho no caer en eso.
I think it's important because you are highlighting, and am I interrupting you, German? Is there something else you want to say about your group?
No, básicamente era eso.
Okay, so I think you're highlighting what I call the organizational or the institutional culture. And we walk into those, we take jobs, we take positions, we work in places that often before we arrive, we do not know the culture, sort of those informal kinds of habits and ways of being. And I don't think we can be ambitious to think that we can change the culture of an organization as one person. Maybe one person might, but usually not. But as one person, what difference can you make? How can you interact or act within that culture that's not participating and promoting what German was calling the lack of caring? In an uncaring institution, how can you act caring? It's a big question. There are no magical or single answers for that. But I think that's something that there's just so many things that all of you have been talking about and bringing up that are so important to continue to think about. And in a way, caring connects with a lot of things happening in our world these days, where there's so many situations and groups of people who are not caring. And then all of a sudden somebody emerges or becomes very visible because of their caring. Okay, so let me pick another name. Is this okay if we continue doing this?
Harleen, we have some questions that maybe we can respond right now. Valeria have it.
Sure, I saw one by Antonello about being public. Are they in the chat?
Yes.
Yes.
Some of them. The other are in another chat.
Okay.
Valeria, ¿puedes leer una pregunta?
Sí, claro. Ya, de las que estuvimos recogiendo en el chat.
Okay.
Porque la de Jan ya la contestaron. Dice Carolina Nora, de Chile. ¿Cómo se hace desde este modelo cuando una persona en sesión te pide directamente un consejo?
Okay. And that does happen, of course. Okay, and why do people ask us for advice? Well, for many, many, many reasons, but I think there are 2 or 3 top reasons. One is that we are in our broader cultures and in our institutional cultures, we are positioned as experts, as persons who have advice and know how to share that advice, know what to tell people to do. And then I think secondly, people do have a lot of misery or pain or tough decisions or frustrations or discomforts in their life that they want some advice on how to handle. If someone asked me, what would you do if this was your 10-year-old daughter? Well, it depends. I'm saying this, it depends to you, not to the mother. I might say, well, I've been thinking about this as we've been talking, and I have a couple of ideas that I can share with you. And they may fit, they may not, but maybe they'll help us find a way to continue talking about your daughter and help us find a way to help you deal with, handle, manage your daughter. So I'm saying maybe. I don't have the answer, but maybe. And I'm not saying, and then I'm using collective language, but maybe we can talk about this and we can develop some ideas about how you can deal with your daughter. So I want to respond to someone who asked a direct question in a way that acknowledges that I respect their question. I consider their question important, and this is my thought at the moment. And I said, I have a couple of things I've been thinking about. And that's because I don't want to say, well, this is something I think you should do. Because I don't want to indicate that there's only one way to respond. There's only one solution or resolution. There are many, 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 many ways. And I say might because it might fit, it might be appropriate for this mother and daughter and this family, but it might not be. And if it's not, that's okay. We can continue talking and come up with something. So I think it's important to respect that people do have questions. They do come to us as the expert with the expectation that we will have an answer for them. But think of all the answers that you have for people who ask you questions. Tell me what to do. What should I do? What would you do? Do you imagine that you have anything you can say that's perhaps different than something either they have already thought of or someone else has already suggested to them? I take a very modest view of my experiences and my knowledge. I do not think I know any more than anybody else about life or how to live life. But I do think that I have some experience and some success in how to create relationships and spaces and processes in which people can talk with me and with each other and with themselves that has some productivity to the talking. Does that satisfy that question? Say again, Marcela, whose question that was?
Hola,
Está
buenas
Carolina.
tardes.
Sí.
Yo dije la pregunta y sí me hace sentido su respuesta.
Carolina, okay, yeah. Okay, thank you, Carolina. And then a question that Carla pointed out to me on the chat was about being public. And that was Antonella's question. So Antonella, would you like to tell us more, or will you tell us more about your question? Are you still here?
Sí, hola. En el grupo que yo estuve,
okay.
En el grupo teníamos esa duda, no nos quedó muy claro a qué se refería lo de ser pública. Si a hablar más de mi vida con la otra persona o a mantenerse abierto a... No sé, no lo entendimos.
Okay, so let me just back up and say something about psychotherapy theories and traditions. That we inherit theories, we inherit traditions, we inherit ethical rules and policies that sometimes were created in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 90s, that don't fit for today's world. And one tradition that we have inherited, and it's a very important for many, many, many therapists, but I don't find it that important. It has to do with what's often called self-disclosure. Or sometimes it's called having professional boundaries. That you do not contaminate, or you do not poison the therapy by letting your client know something about yourself. By bringing in something in your personal life. Well, I don't go around telling people about my personal life. If somebody asks me something, I will respond in a way that I can without going into details. But the therapies, and I would never say, this therapy is for you, not for me. So we're only talking about you. Some therapists are very disrespectful when clients ask them questions like, are you married? Do you have children? Oh, you have a 12-year-old son. Have you ever had this problem with your 12-year-old son? What do you do? I think you respond in a respectful way. You can respond by saying something like, and I'm not saying lie, you have to tell the truth. Yes, I have a 12-year-old son, and if he's had this kind of problem, I don't know about it. But I have worked with other families who have concerns about 11, 12, 13-year-old sons. And I can share with you some of the things that we've talked about and that have been helpful for them and what they've decided on how to handle it. If you want to hear, I can share that with you. Because, you know, no two family situations exactly alike, but there might be something that you can think about or adjust for your situation. So I find a way to respond. Somebody might say, are you married? Well, tell me what your husband does. I think it's fine. Yes, I'm married. My husband is a researcher. He just retired from the university. so I don't have to say much about my husband, but I can, because remember I mentioned this project I had of asking clients about successful and unsuccessful therapy and therapists they wanted to see again, but never wanted to see again. They often not only wondered about what their therapists were thinking about them, but they also wondered about their therapist. Now, don't you think that's just part of being human? I do. I'm curious about the people I meet, but I don't need to know all the personal details about them. I'm curious about each and every one of you. But unfortunately, in a situation like this, I can't learn much about each and every one of you. So I think it's to me, it just seems normal. If someone's going to come to me and share all the intimate aspects of their life, all the pain and misery, all the situations, that I want to respect that. And that's important. Look how important it was when Jose said, he said something like, I'm going to say something personal. My body talks to me. Now, I'm not going to ask him in this situation to go into talking about what his body says to him or when his body talks to him and how it's helpful or not helpful. We're not going to have a conversation about that because that's not why we're here. If he volunteered to have a conversation with me about something important in his life, and this was the topic of the conversation, yes, of course, I would be interested in asking questions which allowed him to talk more about it. And if he asked me, does your body ever talk to you? I would say, I think it does. Unfortunately, I probably don't pay enough attention of when it's talking to me.
Arlene, comparto otra pregunta. Si te parece.
The next question is?
Era de Corina Calle.
Corina, okay.
Entendiendo que todos tenemos nuestros prejuicios que atraviesan nuestros pensamientos cuando estamos en terapia, ¿qué recomendaciones nos puedes dar para tratar de no escucharlos mucho y escuchar y comprender más lo que nuestros consultores tratan de explicar, de decir?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, we often do have prejudgments about other people because we live in that kind of world where we have prejudgments, we're experts on other people. I might be talking to a mother and all of a sudden I'm thinking, this is a helicopter mother. Do you use that term in South America or in Chile or other countries? Mothers that are just, can you explain that, Carl? Helicopter mother? Mothers that just hover over their children and have to know everything and tell them precisely what to do when. Okay. I would have to think. First of all, I would have to catch myself thinking, Arlene, why are you thinking that? Keep in mind that this mother must be very, very worried, very concerned about her 12-year-old son. So maybe there's more you can learn about. So how can I be curious about this mother and what she's concerned or what she's worried about. So it's how to find something to be interested in, to be curious about, some part of the other person's story that they're telling you that will help you move away from your judgment. Now, if you're sitting there and you can't get this thought out of your mind, then maybe you have to think of a song. Maybe you have to say, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry, but I need to go to the toilet. I need a restroom break just for a second." Or, "Excuse me, I forgot to offer you some coffee or water. Which would you like? I'll go get it." Leave the room. Give yourself a chance to think about something else different. If you're aware of something about a person that you're thinking about before they come, or that every time that they come, you wish they would cancel, think about that ahead of time. Talk to a colleague. I have a client coming today that I really do not want to see. How do you deal with that when you have a client that you really would prefer not to see? You wish they would cancel. So sometimes we can't talk with ourselves in a successful way, but we can talk with someone else. In between sessions, go to a movie, read a book. Watch a TV show. Ask your child. Has there ever been anybody in your classroom that you don't like to talk to? Oh, there is. Oh, and why do you think you don't like to talk to them? So you can talk with your children about really adult kinds of things. But you talk with them as children because they are children. They're not just miniature adults. So Karina, does that help, or what should I say? What more do you want me to say?
Sí, no, it's all right. Thank you.
It's okay.
It's okay. Thank
Y'all
you,
are
Harleen.
so polite. It's okay. Okay.
Tengo otra pregunta acá, Arlene. A propósito de la mirada a que cada persona es experta en su propia experiencia y que para escuchar desde la propuesta que nos compartes es necesaria la creatividad y el interés genuino. ¿Qué es para ti, Herlín, importante en cuanto a nuestra labor en terapia cuando el contexto al que acude la persona es obligatorio? Como por ejemplo mandatos judiciales que imponen que la persona o la familia acuda a un proceso. Ahí me pasa que en ocasiones me sentí o vi a mis pares en una posición menos sensible, más juiciosa. Creo que ahí es desafiante la escucha desde la creatividad y el interés, porque hay más presión del sistema que está vigilando, comillas. Junto a esto, la familia ya viene diagnosticada por los profesionales auxiliares del sistema judicial, psiquiatras u otros terapeutas. ¿Qué sugieres tú en los contextos obligatorios? Karina Pérez, de Chile.
No, that's okay. This is Valeria's question. I've got it. Yeah, okay. So at the institute that I'm associated with in Houston, I would say 90% of our clients when we began or from here what's called Children Protective Services or the child welfare public system. And those referrals are mandatory. They have to go to therapy, or their children might be taken away from them, or they might be fined lots of money. So the first thing that I want to think about is that it's a mandatory client and I'm a mandatory therapist. The client has to come and I have to see them. We have a problem together. And that's the most important, as the American family therapist Lynn Hoffman would call it. I don't know how this will translate, Carla, but she called it the presenting edge. I'm trying to find something to show you. Okay. Okay. How do I get a message to everyone? Okay, to everyone. The woman's name first. She called it. It's like the presenting edge of this book. If I were to hand you this book, what would you first see? You would see this edge in the title. So it's what people first present. So I want to keep in mind that the presenting edge of a mandated clinical situation is that the client and the therapist are both mandated. Okay, we've each got a problem. Okay, the next thing that I want is I want to pay careful attention to what the person who has referred them to me has said, whether that was in a phone call or on a form or in an email. What have they said? I'm just going to keep that in mind in my memory. And then when I contact the person who's supposed to be coming into therapy, I'm going to say, let's say that it's been an older brother who's been abusing a younger sister. And they want me to have the mother to bring this older brother in. I'm going to contact the mother, or she may contact me. And I'm going to say, from what child welfare told me, so I'm going to be public, okay? They want me to see your older son because it has been alleged, it has been told that the son has been mistreating your daughter. Now, I do not know your family. I do not know your older son. I do not know your daughter, of course. How do you think we should start? Should I start by inviting you to come in and talk to me and helping me learn more about what's going on with the child welfare group, or with your family, with your son, with your daughter? Do you think I should start first by seeing your son? So it's who should be talking with whom, when, where, and about what. I'm not going to make that decision. I'm not going to let child welfare totally make that decision for me. But I'm going to ask the mother to help me make that decision. Just like if you have an open dialogue meeting, it doesn't mean that automatically everybody comes to the next meeting. Okay, so we're going to meet again next week and continue talking about this. Now I'm in the open dialogue meeting. I move around. So who would like to be part of that conversation? Whether you talk or just listen. Is there somebody who's not here today that would be important for us to invite, to include? So who's in a session, whether it's mandated or not? I think it's helpful to determine session by session. You don't start out by saying, I'm going to meet with the mother and her older son and the young daughter. And that's who I'm going to meet with every time. No, not necessary. This is my bias from my experience. Absolutely not necessary. Who are the important people to be in the next conversation? And who has a voice in that decision? That's not my decision to make for other people. Again, these are my biases. These are things that I have learned over the years from working with people and from feedback from people about therapists who make decisions for them. So let's say the mother says, well, I think I want you to see my son. He's really the problem. I'm not the problem. And I think that child welfare, the social worker has told you everything you need to know. Okay, and your son is 16. Okay, in my experience, most 16-year-old boys don't like going to therapy or counseling, or to have to go talk to people who are seen as being in authoritative positions. So let's talk about the best way to invite him to come meet me. Should you talk to him about it? You want me just to call and talk to him on the phone? So I invite the mother's expertise. Because the Child Welfare Office has mandated that something needs to be done about this woman's son and the situation with the daughter. So Valeria, something else you would like me to say? Does that help in some way, I hope?
La última pregunta ya era la que, bueno, la que había escrito, ya la respondiste en el proceso.
So yes,
Era-
so in a situation where a judge has referred something, it's important to know why the judge referred them. What did the person hear the judge said as the reason to come? And often people who are mandated to therapy do not agree with the reason that someone else has said they must go to therapy or to counseling or to prison, whatever it is. Okay, so you have a different version of the story. Tell me your version. The person in your office is the expert at that time. Okay, so that was the last question. Is that okay? Marcela?
Arlene,
Yes.
we are ready. We are ready.
Well, I tell you, it is Saturday. I understand that. Everybody looks forward to the weekend and you have lots of things to do rather than spend it with Harlene. Although I could spend all day with you. And if you've already experienced, if you ask me something, I can talk and talk and talk. Because I get very excited. So thank each and every one of you for coming. Thank those who have co-sponsored and helped us. The University of Chile, the University of Mayor, of course, Dialógicas, and Enfoque in Paraguay, Fundeses in Argentina, in Facil in Peru. Am I forgetting anyone?
No, you're not forgetting anyone.
Okay, so those of you in Chile, keep in mind, you are part of a large international community. You are part of a large South American community. You are part of a very large Spanish-speaking community. And the journal that I mentioned, International Journal of Dialogic Practices, should be on your PowerPoint, a link, and it's in English and Spanish. And just think, we don't know, maybe a year, you might be able to read an article that the team has written about their work. So keep in mind, if you want to share your work with other professionals, if you want to share, and as a matter of fact, Sandra, thank you for sharing, because I have someone that I supervise who is, her first career, she was an attorney and a mediator, and now she's in a family therapy program. She wants to be a therapist. So be very careful. The therapy world might grab you up. Thank each and every one.
Lo voy a tener en cuenta. Gracias.
Okay. Thank you, Carla. Carla and I have known each other for a while. This is the first time she has officially translated for me. I've tried to be respectful to her and speak slowly, but I get excited and I forget. And I told her she could interrupt me and remind me, slow down, talk a little less. So thank you very, very, very much. I hope to see you again and have a good rest of your weekend.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Gracias,
Adiós.
Joaquín. Gracias,
Chao, chao.
Carla. Gracias a todos de
Muchas
todos los
gracias.
países.
Gracias.
Chao,
Gracias.
gracias.
Chao.
Gracias. Adiós.